بالسماء يا مريم، بالسماء نجمة ولوحي ولوحي يا ريويتنا يا مريم، يا ريويتنا يا ربي خيرنا بحبك، ربي خيرنا يا مد ايدياتك يا مريم، مد ايدياتك يا هي، كدي خياتك نحبك، كدي خياتك يا هي. يا جرار الست يا مريم، يا جرار الست يا هي، تطلعي من البيت يا خسارة، تطلعي من البيت يا هي. بالسماء لوحي يا مريم، بالسماء لوحي يا هي، شيخي تفوحي سابتي، شيخي تفوحي يا هي. جندي في الخيمة سابتي، جندي في الخيمة مد ايدياتك يا مريم، حن ايدياتك يا هي، حنتي مرطب يا مريم، حنتي مرطب يا هي.
All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Beyond Baroque Literary Arts Center, and welcome to Writers for Palestine. Thank you all for being here. My name is Quentin Ring. I am Beyond Baroque's executive director. For those of you who don't know, Beyond Baroque is Los Angeles' oldest literary institution. We have been around for 55 years. We exist to support writers, poets, and artists. We do that in a variety of ways. You can check out a lot of what we do on our website at beyondbaroque.org or on our social media. But one very important thing that we have done throughout our history is support writers in speaking out against injustice, in supporting particularly important causes both here in the United States and around the world. And that is what we are here to do today. We are here to say no to death, to say no to oppression, to say no to colonialism. We are here to say yes to a Palestine that is free, a Palestine where Palestinians can move freely, have self-determination, and exist in peace. There's a lot of fear around this subject. Thank you. There's a lot of fear around this subject in this country, and I believe it's particularly important for literary institutions such as this one to allow writers the opportunity to speak out, to allow communities to come together, and to allow for injustice to be tackled head on. I'm particularly grateful to all the writers that are here this evening for making your voices heard. It is an act of courage. So thank you for being here. I'm very thankful to all of you in the audience. This is a fundraiser for the Palestinian Children's Relief Fund. So all proceeds from this evening go to the Palestinian Children's Relief Fund. There's also, if you'd like to make some donations, that's possible. You can see Yvonne. You can. We have a donation bucket in the bookstore. Just to tell you a little bit about the Palestine Children's Relief Fund. It was founded in 1991 by concerned humanitarians in the USA and provides free medical care to thousands of injured and ill children yearly who lack local access to care within the local healthcare system. Over the years, it has sent over 2,000 affected children abroad for free medical care and sent thousands of international doctors and nurses to provide tens of thousands of children free medical care in local hospitals, and has provided tens of thousands of children humanitarian aid and support they would otherwise not get. So please do make a contribution if you haven't already. We really do appreciate it. And please do let your voices be heard. I want to say a few other words of thanks. I want to say thank you to our core organizers. I want to say thank you to our staff, Eric Alberg in the booth, Jimmy Vega, our assistant director, Genesis Perez, Nick Foreman. And I particularly want to say thank you to Yvonne Salinas, our programs coordinator, who really did the lion's share of putting this whole program together. I don't want to take up too much time, but truly thank you all for being here. This is incredibly important, and I think we all gather strength in community. So thank you. Yvonne's going to come and say a few words, and then we're going to get right into the program. So thank you again.
Thank you, Quentin, and to everybody that's walked into the theater and received the program. The program has the names of the readers, poets, and organizers that will be reading tonight. Just know that also in the back, we have a list of books and organizations, most of them local, that you can support. So a few of them are here, and we will give them space to also share. I'll be brief. I will be naming each poet before they... So sorry about that. Thank you so much, Habiba. Next up, please welcome Sherna Berger Gluck. Sherna? Yes.
Thank you so much, Yvonne. Well, I'm sort of an outlier here. I'm not a poet. I wrote An American Feminist in Palestine 30 years ago after spending 4 years on and off during the first Intifada. I know that many of you have been watching what's been going on in Gaza, and Jabalia refugee camp has been a major target of the Israelis, bombing it regularly. It's in northern Gaza. It's a very active community, and it's the site of the inspiration for the first Intifada, as I'll explain in a minute. So what I want to do tonight is read you my first experience in the Gaza refugee camp in the winter of 1988-89. After that visit, which was with 4 other Jewish Americans and a Palestinian American on behalf of the, I don't know what we called the organization, Jewish Committee on the Middle East, and we were traveling around in solidarity with the Palestinian people during the first Intifada as Jews in the West Bank, anyhow. I then went back to Gaza several more times. I mainly was interviewing women activists, grassroots women activists, in the refugee camps and in the small villages. This is in Gaza as we try to go into the refugee camp, winter 1988-89. There's an air of danger here, emanating not so much from the Palestinians, but from the Israeli soldiers. The usual tension, see if I can look up a little bit, that is felt by those who visit Jabalia was heightened for us when we were instructed not to tell anyone that we were Jewish. After all, we'd been traveling openly as Jewish Americans in the West Bank, distributing a statement signed by thousands of other Jews applauding the November 15th, 1988 declaration of a Palestinian state. Obviously, a dream. Our apprehension increased when the car in which we had been riding pulled into a dusty clearing outside the camp, and a group of young men came over to check us out. Both Munira and Jamal, the former boutique shop owner who was serving as our guide in Gaza, were on edge as they got out of the car to talk with the youths. After an exchange in Arabic, tensions were reduced, and the Shabab, literally youth, but all the young activists were referred to as the Shabab. And the Shabab gave an all-clear whistle. The whistle was really an important element throughout the first Intifada. Whenever you moved anywhere, the whistle is what guided you. They had assessed our little band and decided we were safe. As the Shabab relaxed their stance, the women came out to greet us. They were dressed in the blue and rose taupe, typical of the region, their heads covered in white chiffon-like scarves worn in various styles. They exuded strength and determination as they surrounded us, all shouting. Once their voices sounded angry. It's pretty easy to detect anger, no matter what the language, I believe. But their faces registered friendliness. They wanted us Americans to do something about the tear gas that our country was supplying to the Israeli rulers. As we headed to the camp, scurrying along the raw sewage drain that ran down the narrow pathways, we were swarmed by children following us to our destination. Jamal tried shooing them away, fearful that their numbers would attract the attention and ire of the soldiers who spied on the camp residents 24 hours a day from their observation post. The children were themselves anxious about being spotted, and as they dashed alongside us and behind us, they appeared to be hyperventilating from a combination of fear and excitement. When we finally found the home Jamal was seeking, the children dispersed, ushered into a typical 6-by-9-foot blockhouse. We took our places on the straight-back kitchen chairs that lined the walls and waited. A plump young woman in a long dress and wearing a scarf It's very emotional for me today because yesterday more than 100 people in Jabalia refugee camp were killed by U.S. bombs. A plump young woman in a long dress and wearing a scarf tied at the back of her neck entered holding a baby. She was accompanied by a man of about the same age. Torn between the futility of once again repeating the story of what had befallen their little daughter, Fida al-Shrafi, and the hope that something good might come of their personal tragedy. The couple overcame their reluctance only at the urging of the other women of the household. The mother sat clutching her 18-month-old daughter as if trying to shield her from further harm. The child sat still, expressionless, her father at her side, gently prompting his wife whenever she flagged. The mother recounted how 9 months earlier, carrying her infant in her arms, she was shopping in the open market during a brief lifting of the curfew. A volley of tear gas had been unleashed, and the next thing she knew, the baby was hit in the eye by a rubber bullet. Inexplicably, the soldier who had fired the bullet tried to remove it, an act that might very well have precluded the possibility of ever saving the eye. For the rest of her life, Fida al-Shrafi will wear one glass eye, which her mother took out to show us. I found that the only way I could control myself during the telling of the story was to concentrate on a spot on the ceiling. It was too painful to look at the child, especially at the empty eye socket. All I could do was sit with my arms crossed in front of my chest as if I was trying to hold myself together. Today, had she lived until now, I have no idea, Fida al-Shrafi would be about 33 years old and probably have a family. I wonder if she was killed yesterday in the bombing of Jabalia refugee camp by our U.S. bombs. Please do everything you can to demand justice for the Palestinian people. Thank you.
Yeah, for folks sitting on the steps, please take a seat. Sherna, thank you so much for being here. It is an honor for you to share your story. Yeah, just give us a minute, please. Yeah, you can. Want you all to say it with me, please. Free Palestine. Free Palestine. Free Palestine. Free Palestine. From the river to the sea. Free Palestine. The same way that we are seen here to demand Biden, we need to be calling our reps every day to just flood the phone lines, do anything we can to stop this genocide from continuing. Just to continue with the readings, please welcome Chikwubi Danladi.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you, Yvonne, for inviting me to be a part of this tonight. There's so much that can be said about what is happening to the people of Palestine that is maybe better felt than explained. And in spite of all of the violence and atrocity that we're witnessing, there's also been a lot of beauty in witnessing the solidarity that is happening amongst people, especially in the global South, as the people of East Africa, Central Africa, Southwest Asia come together, and marginalized people in the Western world as well. It's a sign that in that gathering, we're all saying that we're tired of it. And I think it's important for us to remember that as part of how we keep moving forward. I'm gonna read two poems tonight. One of them is by a Palestinian American poet named Zaina Al-Sus, who's based in the US South. And this is from her poetry collection, A Theory of Birds. This poem is called Cinematography. Though I sell the rent of my body daily, I still struggle with legibility and abstract labor. Blue-gray charcoal lines trace innominate bone, nipples with steel bars, a mere detail, a perk of a $30 figure drawing class. I am paid hourly to pose, moderating the distance between art and product. Maybe this is what Marx meant by surplus value, which does not explain the sensation of watching my geometry against the page, a swell, a record. Even Marx could not categorize every exertion. Chopin's piano notes, fragrant noise, salt wet laughter. What about yellow? Or the color of orgasms, non-productive conduits of else. The space between price and lavender. On my browser, an article about lost cinemas, 2 bulldozed in the West Bank in less than a year. In the demolished projection room of Al-Assi, live remnants of yellow frames. Marx in this poem fail to fully explain the actions of workers watching film alive under occupation. Poetry and film survive as incomplete forms of description, a vaccine of distance. To locate a self in study is to chase an orchestra of the dead. The summoning music often too faint, too far away, to tend to the tensions of work and scene. Yeah, shout out Zaina. And she has been someone who's also been very active as a Palestinian in diaspora, doing a lot of work organizing, particularly in the South. So please check out her work. And then I'm going to read one poem of my own that I feel is in conversation with that one. This poem is called Known and Lesser Catastrophes. Used to displacement, one makes a fetish of abandon. Pardon me my being so evasive. The truth is every border is a trap. Everyone punishes by shouting, by slut, bisected, bisexed engendered landscape. This is it, the life I love. Such an inconsiderate settlement. The worst fate follows being indigenous to any place. Some search for small conquests and comfort by adding politan or citizen to their name. One problem is how quickly we run opposed from each other. Another is empire's hideous and clumsy hands, false hopes, wagered in naturalization and resettlement. This refugee era is akin to being adolescent. How bumpy. Surviving exile was only the first triumph. How now to make a condition of it? This bitterness. Simply, since many will counter their wealth against me, I demand my menial benefits, my boots, my mule, my ID card, my intact clit, capped tooth, bifocals, doctored papers, entry vaccines. But know that any hyphenated identity means just one, has lost the war. What a shame, I betted. Be wary of any subaltern who aims to be president. Beware of any self-aware subaltern, or permanent resident aliens, or native patriots. A theorist appears to jot down how happily I rupture such well-stitched margins with my bloodstains. I let myself, the meat and offering to ancestors. Bring along the spices and the curry when time comes to cook the rich. If it seems unethical, consider how they are rich. In stability, I become slobbish and guard even my good senses from everyone. Ice queen with empath tendencies. Must we all tend our own wounds? Or do we seek older solutions? When pained, gather nettles and eucalyptus for salves, bitter tonics. Force an extraction, smudge, scry, conjure, consider the cipher. There is no nation state on this earth worth killing for. Thank you.
Round of applause for Taz Ahmed.
That was so good. I was like taking notes. This is called The Walk Home. I wrote it in 2019, but it still applies. This is after 13-year-old Driti Narayan was run over by a car for a hate crime in April 2019. And it makes me think about the 3 20-year-old boys that were shot for Ryan Cafeas, a kid in Chicago who was stabbed, just like all the hate crimes that are happening. When cars are weapons, sidewalks are target practice on concrete paths. Holding your hand is my political act of adoration, a sign of defiance. We are all trying to walk each other home. This is called Speak. Say Amin, for when humanity teeters on morality, for when dreams question your reality, for when heart breaks in old crackled patterns, for solitude's inward shatters. Say Amin, for the illogical manifesting into the norm, for the relativity of free thought deformed. Say Amin to uncertainty, to failures, to risk. Say Amin to disharmony, to fractures, to conflict. Say Amin because you are still alive in this inhumane world. You still have the will and the courage to survive. Say Amin for when you can't say anymore. Say Amin when there's no words to answer for. This last poem is by Summer Awad. It was in the magazine, Addie magazine. It was, Addie did a magazine opening here, so it's connected to Beyond Baroque. I saw this on Instagram and I thought it was a great poem. So she's a Palestinian writer. It's called Love Poem. I have fallen in love with the men who capture our disaster, who twist a tourniquet onto the bleeding of our people, who write the names on the body bags in hauntingly beautiful penmanship. I want to make love to the lenses of their cameras, want to massage the feet that trek daily over the rubble, want to ready my lover's tea on the flame, to run a bath, to soothe his weary limbs. I want my fatherland to lay his overgrown beard in the crook of my neck, want him to squeeze me when he cries out from the nightmares, from the film reel, of bombs, the frames etched in our collective subconscious because he has decided we must not look away. I want to whisper to him that his existence is revolutionary, that his samad is breathtaking, that I see his gentleness and know he is not a combatant, that his heart was destined for more than martyrdom. I see him sitting atop the rubble as a young girl puts makeup on his face, a rainbow palette of eyeshadows she pulled from the ruins of her home. I see how he holds a maimed toddler in his left arm while driving an ambulance with his right. How he sits on the sidewalk, head against the remaining wall of a store, gazing blankly toward the fiery sky. I see him singing in scrubs, a smile on his face because he had gladly resigned himself to die for the sins of our oppressors so that our people may have everlasting life. I want to kiss him on the forehead, tuck him into one of the heavy fleece throws they wrap martyred children in, want him to sleep deeply, to wake up in the quiet after, to a world in which he is allowed to fall apart. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next poet, Tae-Ki Lee.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Yeah. Great. I have this print. It's available for, it's a dragon that is going ham on a military tank that's broken. And the dragon tail is holding the key, which is the symbol of the right of return. And it says in Vietnamese, freedom for Palestine. Just approach, and I know it's going to be weird, but you can approach me. We can work it out. But all the funds will go to Palestinian Youth Movement and to Pal Legal, who are doing on-the-ground work to keep us focused on liberation for Palestine. I might cry, but it's all good. So I'm going to read a poem by Mosab Abu Toha tonight. Toha was kidnapped and beaten by Israeli forces, and after international pressure, was finally released. But before I read his poem, I'm going to share a few thoughts. So I'm queer and I'm Vietnamese, and I'm a product of American imperialism. As such, I often feel enraged to exist in a world I did not want to live in. From my estranged parents, I learned that surviving the war did not make them good people. Carving out a life here sometimes means capitalizing on your trauma and forcing your children to hold it, heal from it, and clamber up a social ladder just so you can die with the semblance of dignity, because no infrastructure here is going to provide that. Disconnected from my biological family, my anger is a fire that lights the way toward new connections. My parents came as refugees, and they were only categorized as refugees because of an immense wave of people's struggles. For the first time, millions could watch war unfolding on television and saw with their own eyes destruction at the hands of the US government. With their tax dollars, with their drafted children. When I think of the legacies I am tied to, I think of the Third World Liberation Front. I think of the Black Panther Party. I think of the Palestinians who looked to Vietnam's victory against imperialism and colonization as a reason to keep resisting, a hope that is still alive today. It is a hope and a resistance they are making us see every time we open our phones. Their anger illuminates mine. When I think of my lineage, I think of the thousands upon thousands who shut down weapons producers, busy streets, repressive universities, and their own households. In the name of liberation, I think of the Palestinians who throw rocks at tanks and are forcing the prison gates open, all in the name of liberation. This is my lineage, and I hope to make my ancestors proud. This poem is titled Gone with the Gunpowder. Even if the land is barren, it doesn't mean no trees grew before. If flowers do not blossom, the spring never fails to come. Our houses towered as high as our cypress trees. We lit our street lamps with olive oil. Our houses no longer stand. Gone with the gunpowder, the wind of death planted beneath the warm soil. The children's footsteps, the steam from grandmother's teacup, the smoke from grandfather's cigarette flew into the black clouds, never looking back. The noise ahead pulled them by the neck. You can ask the sun. She saw everything. She wished she could stop the actors on the stage, but her neck was tied to a rope. And the villains, they performed their role even after the play was over. And I have nothing. I only write what I can hear of the echo of that noise, while my neck stretches from time to time toward the distant houses, hopeful I will be watching their seeds when they sprout. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. TK's prints will be in the bookstore. Or talk to TK. Next poet, please welcome Sophia Faye.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Free Palestine. Thank you. The first poem is by Noor Hindi. It's called Breaking News. We'll wake up Sunday morning and read the paper, read each other, become consumers of each other's stories, a desperate reaching for another body's warmth, its words buoying us through a world. We carry graveyards on our backs, and I'm holding a lightning bug hostage in one hand, its light dimming in the warmth of my fist, and in the other a pen to document its death. Isn't that terrible? I'll ask you, shutting my fist once more. In interviews, I frame my subject stories through a lens to make them digestible to consumers. I become a machine, a transfer of information. They become a plea for empathy. An oversaturation of feelings will fail at transforming into action. What's lost is incalculable. At the end of the summer, the swimming pools will be gutted of water, and it'll be impossible to swim. This next poem is mine. I'll tell you why I chose to read it after. It's called Variations. It's glamour, it's Paris, it's New York, I say of my friend's work. I've never been to Paris or New York. Only read so much about them I've come to know the feeling, which is not what I'd call truly knowing to the bone or with your fingers. I've thought about this a lot, the spectrum of a lie. How to be impeccable with your word excludes variations of untruth. I lied when I said I'd put everything you gave me away. I'm using the bookmark right now in my friend's book, The Glamorous One. And you, my other you, my friends hate you. I've sworn I won't let you return, but when you inevitably slide back in, I'll welcome you in a quiet way. Abandon myself at the table just in case you want the open seat. Let you drown out Plato's true music, being tuned into your own life so that your words may harmonize with your actions. You, harbinger of discord, me, open ribs. Okay, as Nick says, I've looked in the mirror as long as I can today. I chose to read this poem because I've been thinking about Plato's true music a lot, being tuned into your own life so that your words may harmonize with your actions. And if you're being tuned into the world right now, you'll use your words and your actions to fight for a free Palestine. So I brought this one in. And then I'm going to end on, it's a poem, but it's also a prayer. My friend Moonheart read this, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about it since. Let There Be a New Flowering by Lucille Clifton. Let there be new flowering in the fields. Let the fields turn mellow for the men. Let the men keep tender through the time. Let the time be wrestled from the war. Let the war be won. Let love be at the end. Thank you so much for having me.
We're going to share 2 poems, a few thoughts. Genocide is happening in Palestine, Sudan, the Congo, El Salvador, El Paso, Tijuana. Freedom for all, to all indigenous familia. We are with you. We're louder than the oppression, louder than the colonizer. I don't have compassion for any army that chooses to target children, arrest them, to make families grieve every single day. It is an act of cowardness. This is a poem for my child self and the kids raging against the machine. For playing with rocks, an IDF arrests a child. For driving sin papeles, an ICE officer aims, and brown bodies are already forming crosses. An ICE officer repeats the word my tia screams, "Acuéstate." This child's got a threatening smile. The IDF's finger rests stiff on the trigger, and we watch it unfold on a cracked screen. The ICE officer drives parallel to a fire line of barbed wire, and for the child, the sky is bright blue through the breeze guard. The men in uniforms design detention centers in the desert. It is their specialty to hold the future and lock it as they assess un-Americanness, undesirableness, leave us hopeless and think they can get away with it. I scratch my head at all this mess with the end of a gun. The neck of a child against a cold metal bar that divides what he knows and where the US lies. Cameras bear witness to a Palestine free that echoes across the sea, and quicksands swallow watchtowers and all the shells and spits out their uniforms for the children, like olive trees, continue to sprout, grow taller than any border. Thank you. Came here to reunite with my family after being separated from them for about 4 years. To this day, I've not been able to see my grandfather living in Mexico City for 15 years, which is how long I've been here in the US. And it's all for a card, a piece of paper. I have not given up though. I will see him again and I will be able to come back, move freely. That is not just a dream, but it is a manifestation that it will be a reality, not just for me, but for millions of people living in this country that are dehumanized time and time again. And it is not right. We are here. We are not numbers, figures, political objects. We are here as people. We have families, and this president and any of them that have come before him and the ones to come after need to understand that, need to see that. The next poem I want to read is going to be in Spanish, and it's a translation by Constanza Mendoza and Carlos Soto Roman of a poet I had the pleasure to meet here while he was in residency at the Thomas Mann House, and that is Gayat Almadoun, also Syrian and Palestinian poet, refugee. You could find this in his website, also his book is called Adrenaline, a collection of poems. But this is in Spanish, and partly I want my grandparents to able to understand this poem, hear it. It's called We, and in Spanish it's called Nosotros. Nosotros que estamos esparcidos en fragmentos, cuya carne vuela por el aire como gotas de lluvia, ofrecemos nuestras profundas disculpas a todos los habitantes de este mundo civilizado, hombres, mujeres y niños, porque hemos aparecido involuntariamente en sus pacíficos hogares sin pedir permiso. Pedimos disculpas por haber estampado parte de nuestro cuerpo cercenado en su memoria de blanca nieve, porque hemos violado la imagen del ser humano normal y entero a sus ojos, porque hemos tenido la impertinencia de aparecer repentinamente en los informativos y en las páginas del Internet, desnudos, salvo por nuestra sangre y nuestros restos carbonizados, heridas por temor a horrorizarse demasiado y a los que no pudieron terminar su cena después de haber visto inesperadamente imágenes frescas de nosotros en la televisión. Pedimos disculpas por el sufrimiento que causamos a todos los que nos vieron así, sin adornos, sin que intentaran unir o recomponer nuestros restos antes de que desapareciéramos en sus pantallas. También pedimos aviones y tanques para hacernos volar en pedazos, y lamentamos el horrible aspecto que teníamos después de que apuntaran sus proyectiles y bombas directamente a nuestras blandas cabezas, y por las horas que tendrán que pasar en las clínicas psiquiátricas, tratando de volver a ser humanos, como lo eran antes de su transformación en repulsivos fragmentos de cuerpo, y que les persigan cada vez que intentan dormir. Somos lo que han visto en sus pantallas y en la prensa, y si hicieran un esfuerzo por encajar las piezas como un rompecabezas, obtendrían una imagen clara de nosotros, tan nítida que no podría hacer nada con ella. Gracias. His poem is talking about all the suffering and all the children and men, women that we see on our screens every day. They are not content for us to simply share. They are humans, and we are here for them. We are the Palestinian resistance in this country. So just say it one more time with me, please. From the river to the sea. From the river to the sea. Palestine will be free. Palestine will be free. Gracias. Our next poet is Gara Mora.
Hi, everybody. So, I saw a video today of a young girl with blood and tears rolling down her face in Gaza, asking her uncle, عمو بدي أسألك شغلة هذا حلم ولا جد? Which means, my uncle, is this real or a dream? Please tell me, is this real or a dream? Is what she said. See, my brother was murdered in an act of police brutality in the US in 2015. These systems are all best friends anywho. All oppression stems from the same place. When I heard this little girl say those words, I remember when I lost Firas. I said those same exact words with horror and desperation. I kept wondering when I was going to wake up from this nightmare that had befallen me. I wondered why excessive force was used on my loved one when it wasn't necessary. And I wondered why everyone wasn't standing by me and speaking up for a helpless, beautiful man gone too soon. See, that's the life that Palestinians live in every single day, with every single family member they have. For me, I can grieve and feel relatively safe in my day-to-day life, but this grief that I had endured alone almost took me out completely. It's overwhelming for me to imagine the insurmountable grief that these lovely, innocent humans, Palestinians, humans, are experiencing each day while seeing, feeling, and hearing that it's all justified. Especially a child who is only learning about shapes and colors. How is she going to conceptualize and understand all of this when I, as a teenager, and even now, can't comprehend what's going on at a much smaller scale too. So when I see a small child having to endure something most adults don't endure or understand, I feel immense pain in my chest. I feel helpless. I feel angry with my privilege, but also my lack of it to be able to do much. See, I'm not trying to say I can relate. I'm saying that I feel it in my veins when I know that my brother was murdered by the same system and the same strategies. See, I feel it in my bones when I am talking to my mother about my great-grandfather who developed an unending depression after losing everything and suffered in 1948. That the pain is passed down, that my family grew up in poverty, came here for a better life, and that system found its way to destroy us once again in 2015. I don't claim to fully understand. I feel like I feel a vastly small fraction of this little girl's pain that I mentioned. At least the walls are standing. I'm in Los Angeles. I have many privileges. I see what she says. I feel it in my veins. I feel the words of wonder. Please tell me, is this a dream? Is this real life? Thank you.
Thank you, Dada. Next up, we have an organizer from West Side for Palestine. Just want to give a huge shout out to them and to Justice for Palestine for this banner, for all the organizing they've been doing, to tell Congressman Ted Lieu to cease fire, and also for everything they are providing. They do have a table outside. So please welcome Alejandro. Is he here? Hey, Alejandro.
Okay, hi everybody. My name is Alejandro. I'm one of the co-founders of the group West Side for Palestine. We recently had a demonstration a couple of weeks ago out here in Venice. Some of you might have attended. I'm up here as one of the 5 co-founders of West Side for Palestine, and something unique about our group is that it's founded by 5 educators. We are all teachers. We're all actually teachers here at Venice High School down the street. So today I'm going to talk a little bit, and I don't want to take too much time from the wonderful poets, but I want to talk to you guys coming from 2 different perspectives. One is as an educator, as a teacher, and one is as a resident of the West Side. As a social studies educator, I think it's very important that we have these conversations about what's going on in the world in our classrooms. And believe it or not, it's actually more difficult than it needs to be. Venice High School has a history of outcasting and silencing some of the teachers who have tried to come out and speak in favor of the Palestinian struggle. So a little bit of context on my story. So I've only been a teacher for 3 years. And at LUSD, when you first come in as a brand new teacher, there's like a probationary period where the first 2 years you're kind of on thin ice, like you're watching yourself and you're making sure you don't mess up. And as someone like me who is a history teacher, and wants to approach history a certain way. I was scared to teach about certain things because I didn't want, a parent to complain, or I didn't want to get in trouble. So, I felt shame that in those first 2 years, I decided that talking about Palestine could get me fired. So I wasn't going to do it. I don't want to risk my job. I don't want to, I just started, I'm new. I don't want to do it. And I struggled with that a lot. My reasoning for it was I'm a US history teacher. How could I, it's okay if I pass over it. Of course, that's a lie. There's plenty of ways we can connect it to US history. But last year I was given ethnic studies as a course, and it's my dream class. Like I can finally teach some real history. But if you guys don't know, our ethnic studies curriculum in California was torn apart by Zionists and conservatives because we were mentioning Palestine. They refused to have it in there. And if you look up the curriculum even now, nothing. There's no mention of Palestine. We are not allowed to teach it. And just a couple of weeks ago as well, or this week, we got an email from the district advising us on how to tackle this topic. And no mention of Palestine, nothing. But they did have links to, lessons we could use in the classroom. I knew what I was going to find when I clicked on it, but I did anyways. And I did a quick search for the word Palestine. Not a single mention of the word, nothing. So I'm in my third year, I feel a little more comfortable, and I've decided that no, my students are going to hear about what's happening. Like whether I get in trouble or not, our students have to have these conversations. This is where they have them. This is where we teach our students how to have these conversations. So yeah, just as I've taught world history, just as I've taught about the Holocaust, just as I've had to have conversations with my students about anti-Semitism. In the last couple of years, there's been celebrities saying some disgusting things about our Jewish community. I've had to sit them down and say, anti-Semitism is not welcome in this room. We don't use that kind of language. We don't talk about our communities like that. They're now going to hear the same thing about the Palestinian struggle. We have to talk about it. We just have to. I think people in power often forget that places of education are where our society grows. We need to have these difficult conversations in these spaces. So, as a history teacher, I make sure my students know that, it was college students in the South who decided to stage sit-ins against racial segregation in the 60s to end, America's version of apartheid. I teach them that, it was high school students, Chicano high school students, just down the street here in the 60s, they walked out of school because they were tired of LAUSD treating them as disposable and not paying attention to their struggle. And I also teach my students that, it was college students who challenged and continue to challenge a lot of America's disgusting actions like Vietnam, and now as we see them support Israel and what they're doing to the Palestinians, even if they get pushback, even if they face police violence or murder, like in the case of Kent State, my students know that as students they have power, and that the classroom is going to be a safe space where we can have these discussions. So when I became a teacher, I thought my main worry was going to be, grading papers and misbehaving kids or the occasional difficult parent. I didn't think just 3 years in I'd have to fight my campus and fight my district on just mentioning the word Palestine, or feeling like I have the freedom to talk about this in my classroom. But our organization is an example that if we have to, we will wage that struggle, and we will make sure that our campus and our students feel safe knowing that they can have a talk about that. And as I tell my students, I have a Palestinian flag in my room. They can do what they want. I don't care anymore, right? This is more important than just job safety. We have to, as teachers, be the role models to our students that we have to speak out against injustice whenever it occurs. Now, as a West Sider, I'm third generation. My family has lived in the same 3-block radius of Culver City since the 1960s, and it's important that we make connections between struggles so that we can better understand them. And there is, of course not on the same scale, but there is a connection between the Palestinian struggle and the working class West Siders here in Los Angeles. We're the targets of settler colonialism. Straight up. And I use a phrase, a quote with my students when I teach them about settler colonialism. It says, colonization is not an event, it is a structure. And what we're seeing now is that same game plan being used all across the world, in the United States, in Palestine. It's this structure of settler colonialism. And Black and brown communities here are facing an attack that seeks to take our land, seeks to take our history and our culture and our lives away. Here it's called gentrification. Not too far from here, a couple blocks away, we have the beautiful community of Oakwood, which is a historically Black community founded by Black residents who literally built Venice. And over the years, they've been facing, legal and physical attack from the city to try to erase their history, their culture, and take their land. Police and state agents physically and legally harass our communities with things like gang injunctions and intimidation to try and get us to leave our communities. For example, just a little bit about myself. I've never once committed a crime. I'm not, I've never done anything bad. But at 13 years old, I was held at gunpoint by Culver City police. We've been pulled over, me and my family, many times. And one time they told us, I don't want to see you around here anymore. You don't belong here. And these are methods used to achieve the same goal that many Israelis have for Palestinians, except that I, of course, have the option to go home and feel semi-safe in that home, while the Palestinians, of course, don't. So right now I'm actually teaching my kids a lesson on mass incarceration. And mass incarceration is, of course, one of those tools being used to dismantle and destroy violently our communities of color. My students hear the statistic that 1 in 3 Black men in this country is going to be caught up in the prison system at some point in their life. We look at images of little kids in cages being watched by armed guards at our border. And what I see and what I hear from them is that they're making the connections between our struggle here and the images they're seeing across the globe. They're feeling a connection between them and people who before this felt so distant. And of course, lastly, we can't forget that we're literally on land that was violently taken from people through murder, through biological warfare, through just total war. So it should be no surprise that we continue to do this to our communities here, and then we go ahead and support other countries doing it, other people, other governments doing it overseas. So lastly, I just wanted to say that when our friends or our relatives or us as educators, our students ask why we should care about the struggle of the Palestinians, besides just basic human empathy, we should tell them that their struggle is shared by oppressed communities globally, including here in the United States and including here in Los Angeles. We need to make these links. Whether it's the Black struggle, the Chicano struggle, working class folk, poor folk, queer folk, Indigenous people, we need to make sure that we see the commonality in our struggles. Only then will we begin to chip away at that power structure, whether that structure is here in the United States or it's against the Israeli occupation. Thank you.
Courage to all our educators and for everyone to use our platform to speak up. We are stronger together. Next poet, please welcome Teresa Maychuk.
Thank you, Yvonne. Thank you, everyone, for being here. As TK had mentioned, first of all, I was born in Vietnam, Saigon, Vietnam. I'm a boat refugee. I spent 3.5 months on a freight boat when I was two and a half years old. after the American war in Vietnam. So my family was directly impacted by US military imperialism. My father spent 9 years in a prison camp in the jungles of northern Vietnam after the war. And this shirt that I'm wearing, Vietnam to Palestine, Vietnam has had a close relationship with Palestine for many, many years. And there is a Palestinian embassy in Hanoi. So Vietnam had recognized Palestine as a nation back then, and leaders of Palestine come to Vietnam and did military training back in the 70s. In September, Vietnam and Palestine had a soccer game together. It was so heartbreaking to see right afterwards what happened. So I'm going to read a few poems that I wrote for Gaza. I lived in Palestine for 2 years and had the honor of touching the land, of touching the water, and the land, the water, and her people have a deep place in my heart. This poem was written in 2011. Eternity in Gaza, Khan Yunis Refugee Camp, 2001. When the canisters fell, they were ready, thinking more tear gas, but a white cloud flowered above, then changed colors and emitted a sweet odor that made them want to breathe in the way one breathes in the smell of sweet tea. The color darkened until it looked like a burning, and people ran to put out what they thought were fires on their neighbors' rooftops. Muscles began to cramp, constricting as if from the bite of a scorpion. A woman dropped her child as she scratched herself in a fit of convulsions. A father attempted to hold down his son, who flailed and moaned until he fell into a coma. The teenagers who played with the canisters, who taunted their apparent harmlessness, shrieked and shook in pain for weeks. The doctors had never seen anything like this before. The villagers had never seen anything like this before. The convulsions came like waves for an entire month, and family members who sat and cried at bedside wailed in pain almost as much as the victims. Some visitors were stunned silent, their eyes inward, heads tilted to the side, as if not looking would somehow make it be not truly happening. In a laboratory far away were beakers, scientists in white gowns and goggles, microscopes and gloves. At the end of the day, they went home to their wives and wives to their husbands. The tables were set, the dinner was ready, warm and steaming, and the children swung their legs beneath the table. And that poem was based a response to a documentary that I had watched called The Gaza Strip. This next poem as well. Playground. Quote, happiness is a ball after which we run wherever it rows, and we push it with our feet when it stops. Goethe. The tank was the color of desert sand. It rode by like a slow-moving beetle and dropped a glove gently to the ground. The glove was a baseball glove. A few boys huddled around, and one of them picked it up. Inside the glove was a metal ball, a glove and a ball. Another boy suggested taking the ball apart and selling the metal pieces. The boys began to hammer it. One of the boys held the ball in his hand and threw it against the wall. The ball bounced back and exploded in his abdomen. The dead boy was brought to the morgue. Women gathered to identify the mutilated body. The boys who survived walked around with furrowed brows and a deep silence that only such shock could induce, surrounded by wails. A room full of people without furniture, drowning in a sea of sand. Sand they had believed held water. I have one short poem. This was based on a news article that I read. The most blood I remember seeing was when I gave birth to my son. The blood covered his small body and dribbled out of mine. And then the doctor pulled the placenta out from within me. It was covered with my blood. I had never seen so much blood, of my blood outside of my body, itself creating another human being. And somehow this brought me great joy and also great fear. It must be the first step to losing and parting. This must be the greatest fear. This must be the greatest fear in my first experience of separating from something that was such a part of me that my cells themselves created him. I remember seeing so much blood when I watched the news and the Palestinian child running among rubble after bombings was covered in blood. And I wondered if it was the blood of his mother. Thank you. May Palestine have peace and be free.
Thank you so much. Next up, Basha Motemedi.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Yvonne. Thank you, Beyond Baroque. Thank you, everyone, for being here. This is an extreme honor to be here. I don't know if the sound person needs to know this, but I'm going to get pretty fucking loud at some point, so I apologize for that. It's interesting to me that when it's a standard poetry reading, and I do a lot of poetry readings in and around Los Angeles, and it's your standard fare, it's usually a lot of white people. If joy is an act of resistance, who are they resisting? Do they not own a mirror? But when it's liberation, all of a sudden it's diversity, and it's the most diversity I'll see that year. I guess we need to be angry a bit longer to be joyful. In any ways, I suppose I'm a man, and I've learned it's my job to choke this down so I can still use my larynx to scream. So here are some angry poems. Oil to the surface. I saw the explosion of American flags on my safe and sound suburban street after 9/11, and the big crunch of their disappearance when greed separated from ideology. The newly adopted good times spirit of the post-war boomers went starved and sullen to fat and happy, now swollen and numb. Aerial views of suburbia like the inner workings of nature itself, Fibonacci and golden ratios all present, but as a pattern for human ailment never observed. Forlorn real estate gladly turned to malls, carrying every single item needed when burning aluminum cans and cutting eyes of relatives out from pictures don't provide the chemical thrills they once did. The sick fermented smell, iron and onions and 30 days sober again, desperate coffee breath, voices colic from a failed generational ferberization experiment, benefiting parents that really did need a break or a messiah or an ICBM. This aggressive disorder, cataracts of modernity, conviction of rightness, in the ever absence of doubt, nothing's right, nothing's wrong. There only exists undiagnosed ancient avarice present in our DNAs to read without eyes all this while. I have two more. Be careful. This is a very long title. Be careful at the gym, friends. You don't want to become a stock photo model or a body double in a Michael Bay movie about killing fucking Arabs. America votes with their eyes. Some of the most deadly ballots cast while walking down the street, shackled by school hall taunts. I remember the first time I was called an Arab. I played football in my hometown, home of the Navy SEALs and Top Gun. And all of my coaches were SEALs or SEAL instructors. They had all seen action and killed some brown savages like me. You could see it in their eyes, the same tone you have when you realize you're wrong in an argument, but you continue screaming anyways, because admitting truth is scarier than dying. And their eyes mirrored back that they were okay with me, and then I still had the defense of Persian, not Iranian, not Arab, at least in an adult level argument. What I'm trying to say is if you make your body just doughy enough as though you're patting yourself preemptively for some extra abuse, it seems to not come, at least in the forms you've hedged against. This last one's called Petit Objet A, or Shut the Fuck Up. I'm exhausted by your missions accomplished. You've helped some psychobabble millionaires take root in the unexplored minds of millions of broken boys. You've helped those boys grow up and murder pro patria boys like me, Marie in the sand and oil, Dolce et decorum est for people like me to die for your sins and your oversights. You've helped ravage what you call poor countries. Parenti tells us you don't go to poor countries to make money, and anyways, only the people are poor. And they're poor because you've manufactured discord, infighting, and xenophobia, the old switcheroo. Long enough to get in like a fat yet somehow still starving raccoon to get what's good and scurry off with night vision. I hope when the wretched refuse of the teeming, exploited, swollen shores begins, some to drown and some to swim, that they arrive ready not to assimilate, but annihilate your object cause of desire. Thank you.
Round of applause for Leslie Ortega.
At dinner, we plan on how to eat the rich. Throw away our cobalt-wired phones and make do with a homemade pager. What do we really need to send? At dinner, we plan on how to eat the rich. Start with what rich means in westernized comedies, a salary beyond the means, owner of acreage, rich in extensive comfort, the kind where you'd never have to touch the ground with a bare soul, the kind where you'd never have to breathe the same air as a farm laborer. No worry about the next grocery bag to fill. At dinner, we write out a diversion plan, convincing the world our designer bags are filled with necessity. Yet the Starbucks cups caked onto the cup holders can't be taken away along with the caked on makeup of KK. Supporting visionaries of beauty, highlighting faces of multiple dimensions. The color no longer speaks for itself. The color remains celebrity. Funding things that we refuse to see. Starvation, homelessness, and genocide relentlessly. Clutch your pearls, we're not going anywhere. The voices will rise like blood-stained hands on the coffin of the rich. What makes you feel good? Retail therapy is a running joke. Pulling out thorns from children's worker hands, sustain the global world in our hands. Our phones won't bleed until we see our hands with the blade feeding the rich. The rich behind your phone screen dripping into credit card statements. We can eat the rich as soon as we learn how rich we are. Blessed to come from roots that may or may not be alive. Chosen family rooted in similar wavelengths, threaded through unseen mycelium like blood veins. The closer you get, the warmer the sun gets inside. I dream of all celebrities' followers to go down to the hundreds, like a joke. Hundreds at the bottom of the barrel, maybe they can see us there, but we'll probably be floating as they witness us in awe like polluted air, pink and purple hues of an unforgiving sunset. Sustaining the value of corporate greed, masked availability to the world. We can all be seeds, but some reach for the sky too early and deplete. Thank you. I'd like to read one piece by a Palestinian poet, Ahlam Basharat, and it was translated by Fadi Judah. It's called How I Kill Soldiers. Colonial soldiers, what have they been doing to my poetry all these years, when I could have easily killed them in my poems, as they've killed my family outside poetry? Poetry was my chance to settle the score with killers, but I let them age outdoors. And I want them to decay. I want them to know decay in their lives, their faces to wrinkle, their smiles to thin out, and their weapons to hunch over. So if you, dear readers, see a soldier taking a stroll in my poem, trust that I have left him to his fate, as I leave a criminal to his many remaining years. They will execute him, and his ears will execute him, as he listens to me reciting my poem, Grieving Families. He won't be able to slink out of my book or the reading. As the seated audience stares at him, you will not be consoled, soldier. You will not even as you exit my poetry event, with slumped shoulders and pockets full of dead bullets. Even if your hand, tremulous as it is from so much murder, fidgeted with the bullets, you will not produce more than a dead sound. Thank you.
Beautiful. Please join me welcoming our Assistant Director and poet, Jimmy Vega.
Gracias, Ivan. Thanks for being here, y'all. I am consumed. I am in grief. I am enraged. This remix is inspired from the Palestinian poet George Abram after his poem Ars Poetica, in which every pronoun is a free Palestine. Another freeway poem an Ars Poetica written near the 710, redux, remix, wherein all you think of is an olive tree in Gaza. For you. 1. This is another freeway poem. This is another highway poem. This is another poem about a road. This is another poem wherein all you think of is an olive tree in Gaza, about mothers. This is a poem about mothers separated from their children by ice. This is a poem about cages, about mothers locked in cages, about fathers locked in cages, about parents locked in cages, about children locked in cages, about locking myself in stanzas and calling it a closet, a tiny room. An open-air prison camp out of gas is still an open-air prison camp wherein all you think of is an olive tree in Gaza. The mother is the mother of my... This is a poem about cages around a goddamn lake. Where do you put the houseless when you take away their less? When you unshelter their home? This is a poem about mothers locked inside 6 a.m., closing their sleep lids with lights on in Adelanto, California, carefully holding their children inside their cornea. 2. This is another poem about rushing home. My brother tells me, drive safe, 0 traffic, 78 on the 90 and searching for my abuelito's voice as if wiping my mother's tears would break light red anguish. This is another freeway poem, another poem about mothers losing fathers. My father, rushing towards stone streets or else Michoacan avenidas. His mother won't recall his face most days. And the day she left him, stained his dream tears, puddled salt wounds, his face child slack and lost. This is another freeway poem, another poem about fathers losing mothers, about wherein all you think of is an olive tree in Gaza. This is a poem about mothers losing their children for selling loose cigarettes. This is a poem about nicotine-drenched roads. This is a poem about crying for a mother into pavement. This is a poem about murder for $20, news media upset at ACAB cardboard signs and brick-shattering corporate Wilshire and Fairfax. This is a poem about cops tear-gassing us and coloring our iris blood red. 3. This is another poem about car crashes bruising my ribs until I understood what anaphora meant. Crashing inside wherein all you think of is an olive tree in Gaza. Because pain is everything. Because pain is everything. Because pain is everything. Because I keep trying to shake God's fingertips off my aphasia. This is another poem about black and brown kids knowing alliteration through the sound of bullets ringing in the cities of Linwood, Watts, and Compton. So we scribble strophes on the soles of our mother's feet and we color Tonka on traffic signs in pastel acrylics. This is another freeway poem, silenced not by carbon dioxide, but by asphyxiation, learning refrain while kissing concrete. Please, I can't breathe. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. This is a poem about Joseph crashing inside his mother's arms before her lungs collapse, her body vanishing. I can hear her voice, bioluminescent withering, dissipating in ocean breath. Joseph tells me he'd eat her cancer if he could. A beautiful drowning. Crashing waves near the South Bay, catatonic daydreams past dizzy 1:10 a.m. Torrance streets, gray and phosphorus, skeletal cavity driving towards half-brightness of her sleep, clouded graphite bereavement, traffic light glare. This is not an allegory. This is another freeway poem wherein all you think of is an olive tree in Gaza. 4. Alexi tells me my pain is temporary, as if I'm not suffering upon suffering upon suffering. So I swallow antistrophes on mornings when I hear my abuelito's voice inside Chalino Sanchez lyrics because pain is everything. His laugh lost inside Linwood Avenues because pain is everything. Reverberating voice tucked inside my optic nerve. I can see it if I'm quiet because pain is everything. Who am I hurting writing this? Is this my diaphanous death? And the scrawl blasted on freeway concrete is poetry. Same way the light that glares on raw sewage in the flower district is poetry. Same way food trucks appear as stanzas on Olympic or La Brea, that too is poetry. Same way a chain link fence can't keep us out is poetry. Same way the crescendo of an engine past midnight during a takeover is poetry. Same way the angel on Broadway and 7th, shirtless, open feet to the ground, singing street songs is poetry. Rearrange this line, A, B, to feel something. Call it a midnight boulevard elegy. Wrap it in neon plastic wherein all you think of is an olive tree in Gaza. This is a poem about collapse. A.B. Siderius actually briefly chasing daydreams, escaping finality, pirouetting on the 110 to my friends, forecast liminal brightness tucked inside shadow play, southbound and lost. Los Angeles is a burning palm tree, and I keep choking on raining soot. I can't breathe in a city wrought with ghosts, wherein all you think of is an olive tree in Gaza. Free Palestine.
Gracias, Rumi. Todos somos poesía. Please welcome Seba Sarwar.
Many thanks to Quentin, Ivan, Jimmy, and of course Jazz for inviting me tonight. And I really want to commend Beyond Baroque for your statement. It takes courage, it takes guts. So thank you, Beyond Baroque. Arts organizations, education institutions are choosing silence. And so it's an act of bravery to host this and for us to be together. So thank you. I'll start by just asking us to just for a moment, to look at where the bombing is happening in the context of California. Just here, this little spot is being erased. And that pause was not a pause, it's just time, breath. And we are in day 57. I've written many poems about borders, about collapsing borders, about Palestine. But today I just want to share some raw writing. We can just start the images rolling. It's just raw writing because that is all I can do today, is raw writing. What else can emanate after 57 days of bombing, 7,500 miles away, in a strip of land, just one third, the size of Los Angeles. Today, 20,000 people, 8,000 children, and the numbers will change tomorrow and next month, are murdered by Israeli bombs and are US dollars. One child killed every 10 minutes. If this is not genocide, what is? Questions about a forbidden chant. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. A forbidden chant. And I ask, how the call to walk from the river to the sea is not a call to keep hope alive, and how a demand for a free Palestine A return of olive trees to its people is a war cry. And how at schools, colleges, nonprofits, corporations, social media, on the streets in this land, just to say Palestine and genocide and to wear a keffiyeh is a death wish. And why in Gaza and the West Bank is it death to breathe and live. Thank you. I had all these poems picked out, and Mahmoud Darwish, Fadi Judah, Sohair Hamad, Faiz Ahmed Faiz. There's so much writing that we could read every day, all the time. But today, I was with my friend Olga Garcia Echeverra. We've been doing many marches, and she brought this post. And it's words from Bisan, who is in Gaza. And I thought, instead of a poem, the bombs are falling. We need to hear and talk about what is happening in Gaza right now. It is morning there. And what is happening? Bombs are falling. I no longer have any hope of survival, Bisan says, like I had at the beginning of this genocide. And I am certain that I will die in the next few weeks or maybe days. I have been sick with severe viral infection for days and cannot move from the mattress. I suffer from nightmares that are so closely resemble reality that I no longer differentiate between reality and dreams. I live in a world other than the one I claim to be building. I am a community activist who lived on the fantasy that the world was free and just. And I sought to bring rights not only to my people, but to many men and women in third world countries. I was shocked that I was not from the third world. Indeed, we are the most humane and moral. Yes, because the world approves, supports, and finances the genocide we are being subjected to, legislates it, and gives reasons that for 58 days, while we are a people who have been living on occupied land for 75 years and are still searching for our rights and communicating our voice to the people, my message to the world: you are not innocent of what is happening to us. You, as governments or peoples that support Israel's annihilation of my people, we will not forgive you. We will not forget, even if we die. The history will never forget. A message to friends who are all here today. Thank you, and the supporters of the world. You have been compassionate and strong. We ask you not to lose hope, even if the world seems completely unfair, and your efforts have not yet resulted in ceasefire. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Seba, to all our poets, to you all for sticking around. Just have a few more poets to come to the podium. So please, sorry, can someone tell me the next name after Seba? Sonia Biansaka, please welcome.
I'm going to start with this small poem by Marwa Makho. In order for me to write poetry that's not political, I must listen to the birds. And in order to hear the birds, the warplanes must be silent. This poem that I want to share with you tonight is called Calling Cards. It's an ode to those damn plastic cards. I grew up undocumented for 21 years, and my parents and I, we would buy those calling cards at the store, at the bodegas, and would scratch the back and try to reconnect with our homelands, with our families, and the pain of staying relevant in their lives and to stay alive in each other's memories. And so this poem made me think of the images and videos I saw of Palestinians in Gaza charging phones, calling each other between the bombs, and the eSIMs cards that were so important to make sure that there's a heartbeat on the next line. So this is calling cards. 1. Across oceans and land, working to connect one phone line with another. Like an umbilical cord, these 5, 10, 20 square cars are more than plastic. These calling cards have heartbeats. 2. We survived through phone lines, a cycle of dialing numbers. On the other line waited abuela. On the other line waited memories. On the other line waited birthday wishes that should have been given in person while eating guava cake. But we were here. And you were there. On the other line, we waited by payphones. We waited for your voice. We waited. That is all we had. My dad waited for you. He still does. 3. How do you die a loved one when your fingers have worn out from weaving too many memories, when your voice has changed since the last time you saw them in person, your bones have broken from their absence, your lips have withered, your face is the only clue left of what they might look like now? Perhaps it's best not to look in the mirror. Perhaps you are too ashamed of holding on to old memories. 4. I can still hear Abuelita Alegria's voice. Abuelita, ¿cómo está Ecuador? Sí, sí, abuelita, prometo que regreso. And then a long pause. You hear her shuffling the phone, trying to remember which side to talk from. She is not familiar with this technology. I call it old school. Some call it poverty. Abuelita's gentle voice rocks me back to memories of when she carried me as a baby. My face lays flat on her back. She hangs up and I lay gripping onto her words, trying not to let go. Never enough minutes. 5. Calling cards don't have heartbeats anymore. They just hang in the store, teasing you. Now, Dad stops at the bodega for other reasons. His mouth curls up around the rim of the bottle, longing for one more conversation. I think he believes that with every beer, he gets closer to heaven, closer to her, closer to home. And secretly, I wish that was true. 6. The phone goes unused, like the passport in my wallet. No more dialing. In his palms rest spaces where my grandma is buried, and even then, the lines on his hands create borders, restricting him from getting too close. Dad wants to hold my hand, but mostly we look at each other, hoping to find comfort. He says that I look like abuela. Thank you. And this last piece is not a poem, it's something that I witnessed earlier today. I was at the Children's March for Palestine, and lately, as many of you have, I've been sitting with my rage. I've been angry, I've been sobbing, I've been angry, so much anger. And today, there was anger and rage at the protest, but I also saw love. And I saw the most beautiful, most amazing and brilliant protest signs that didn't even have words. They had stickers. It had stickers of dinosaurs and stickers of flowers. And I saw the most tiniest megaphones being held by the tiniest human. And they're like, chanting, "Free Palestine, free Palestine." And that's where I felt the love. And so there will be a free Palestine in our future. And it is possible. And it is there. And I hear it. And I heard it in a megaphone. And I saw it in those protest signs. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia. Next up, Reese Langston. Good evening, everybody. It's been, I'm just trying to figure out really what I'm gonna read, but I'd like to start out with a poem by Mahmoud Darwish, Beyond Identification. Because the other day I was at my parents' house and they had on CNN, you know how it is. And during a break, I think it was like an ad for Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, and I just thought about desensitization and I don't know, it's just a crazy collision for me. Beyond Identification. I sit in front of the television since I can't do anything else. There, in front of the television, I discover my feelings and see what's happening to me. Smoke is rising from me and I reach out my severed hand to pick up my scattered limbs from many bodies, and I don't find them, but I don't run away from them either because pain is such an attraction. I am besieged by land and air and sea and language. The last aircraft has taken off from Beirut Airport and put me in front of the television to witness the rest of my death with millions of other viewers. Nothing proves that I exist when I think, as Descartes says, but rather when I am offered up in sacrifice, now in Lebanon. I enter the television, I and the beast. I know the beast is stronger than me in the struggle between aircraft and bird, but I have become addicted, perhaps more than I should have, to the heroism of the metaphor. The beast has swallowed me, but has not digested me. I have emerged unscathed more than once. My soul, which was confused in the belly of the beast, has inhabited another body, lighter and stronger. But now I don't know where I am, in front of the television or inside it, whereas I can see my heart rolling like a pine cone from a Lebanese mountain to Rafah. And I wanted to read a poem of mine that is in direct, I would say, contrast to that, if not conversation. Wrote it a few years ago. I was staying up late so that I would kind of hallucinate when I was writing, and I would get between measures of sense. And a lot of this, particularly as someone who has existed inside the Jewish community, but also as a Jew of color, Black Jew, I've noticed a lot of avoidance, a lot of speaking around things. And the damage of that, the literal damage of that, but also the the cycle of it, I guess. I'm almost at a loss for words, but that's how I'll connect these two. Political divides about pet food. Political divides about pet food without the thrills of restricted speech, so all opinions matter nothing. Equally so soon the conversation will be open to parents and groups not benefited esoterica. Says kitchen, table, tailgate myths, the environment runs on. Two reproductive oscillators in full bloom, hair and makeup, browbeat with categorical disparities. The stanchions themselves are ticketed once you enter. Deep-seated arena echoing scrimmage, hatred, capitalized stalactite nose-bleeding truth from the genus and kingdom, pious billionaires, guilt, poverty. To redress history's headdress, when the mother pushes the father faints, the child crowned coo, dropping the head. Many times no lesson, but crying over short order volume, shy, fine print, magnified and quelled indoors, simplified on local news, shivering out of deli meat. This granulated daycare parses age from moment. Celebrity gouache portrait, vanishing points, varnishing edges of discourse. Fast food academic journal waistline outstretched, dead tongue EMT around the clock, blaring essential workers status at patrons, deaf charity that is clinging to two-tone dogfighting. When the demand should be open air, outside the canopy, smelling salt and licking the wounds, making cower bad posture. The shadow on the wall, facsimile exotic nature, not as forgotten as intended, endangered, preserve, would have belief if not nerve-ending condensed protest. This fatigues all-nighters. Boring holes across continents defined by drawing Department of Justice kitsch, fleeing ascetic vigilantes on shame's opposite color bar, hands smooth over that railing. We should exit Kane the slip mat. Tailor curtains away from glass mortgages. Promissory vocal pedals not allowed paper and ink. Institutions of pronouns then asked to define their antecedents and objectivity using one subject and 3 to 4 predicates. Limit the only punctuation. Cross dissolve if it does not result in focus. Atomize specificity and high aspect numerators by uncommon non-denominational convictions and time-sensitive application, history, routing, network, canned nutrition. The chips, a little more perishable than we imagined. Decay will sense up, seizing modern critique. Press conference haunches, gyrating motion, diamond table cutting through diamond loopholes to cancel out elemental life at its hardest. So keep that emergency good in relative supply of potentially astringent infinity. Thank forebearers of mishap that gave negations for us to remember. Forward integers clarifying blurred variables in this algebra. To substitute blood. And I wasn't gonna do this, but I might, because sometimes, you know, when you say you're a Black Jewish rapper, it comes off as a punchline. But I did write a anti-imperialist, anti-Zionist new wave song, so I'm gonna try and just like strip it down, make it into like a poem. Forgive the sarcastic language in the midst of well-taken solemnity. The Chickasaw fettles on the roof of her mouth. A Yenta eats polenta in the global south. I fumigate the Michigas on 20-inch Michelins. On the Columbus route, 10 East Sands yeast unleavened. Shouts out to the power of God. Bombing a comedy club in heaven when faces express like a true Lebanon's. Don't want a birthright as colonizer. Unoccupied as sympathizer. I remove my 2 eyes and set them in a 2-state solution to soak eye contact. Testament to a circus tent. The Schmendrix levy service complaints were Dirtha Holla will holla. To decades wandering the desert, evicting into choice karma. Like a 2-state solution to soak eye contact. Baruch atah Adonai passed the peace to the minister who got eyes low and lukewarm or Jerusalem blue. Holla. To decades wandering the desert, evicting into choice karma. Watch for the growing few, maybe more, who substitute war flutes and klezmer music as instruments of foreign aid, sustain and right to left Hebrew to center what is Jewish. Let it not fall in line to be hubris. Don't want a birthright as colonizer, unoccupied as sympathizer. I remove my 2 eyes and set them in a 2-state solution to soak eye contact. Thank you. By the way, 2-state solution for me oftentimes feels like the discussion of body cameras on police. Doesn't quite solve the issue. Thank you. Can attest the song also hits, so please check out Reese's music after this. Armine Ignatosian couldn't make it today. She was feeling a bit sick, but she is with us. But I do want to welcome organizer that came tonight to be with us after all the demonstrations happening of the Palestinian Feminist Collective, Amira Jarmakani.
Thank you. Thanks so much, everybody, for being here. I'm a member of the Palestinian Feminist Collective, so I just wanted to let you know a little bit about what we've been up to, but mostly about resources related to that. We are interested in uplifting Palestine as a feminist issue, and not in any kind of marginalized way, but to center that in terms of analysis and just thinking about Palestine. To connect to some of the things that folks have said about also centering joy and love and the creative life energies of Palestinians and feminist analysis that is happening on the ground. That's part of what we're also interested in uplifting. And you could see it in the Palestinian feminist calendar that is for this year that has been created that uplifts artists for each of the months. And I just only mention it because one of those artists was killed by an Israeli airstrike on October 11 with her 3 children. Hiba Zagut is her name. She's in the calendar. So we are holding, obviously, all of us in the room. I'm struggling to hold both of these things simultaneously. I brought my phone because this is how we speak and remember the points that we want to make. But one of the things I can speak to, like from one of the campaigns that, or I don't know, campaign, but most recent statement and a way of providing analysis is shutting down colonial feminism. So I would just like give as an example there, maybe some of you have heard the statistic that 70% of the Gazans who've been killed are women and children. This is clearly one very small, basic reason why Palestine is a feminist issue. We know from this that there is clear, the link to genocide is abundantly clear from just this one statistic, and also the link to the way that reproduction and reproductive justice play a huge role in also in the genocide that is currently happening. We could also think about the fact that, for instance, maybe some of you also heard the statistic that 50,000 women in Gaza were pregnant at the beginning of and starting with October 7, and there have been a lot of thought and conversations around what that means for people and what it will mean to give birth in the midst of genocide, without water and under siege. And also just thinking about, the fact that a lot of women, girls, and people who are menstruating have been taking birth control pills to stop their cycles because of the siege, the lack of water, these kinds of things. Just uplifting these notions, these facts as well, in addition to center the fact that everything that is happening is a feminist issue. And that analysis can help us think about liberation more broadly and more in a more grounded way, perhaps, as well. The one last thing I would say in this respect, and as a way of linking to another point, is that some of us, when we post or when we're posting or talking about what's happening in Gaza, we may receive comments that are homophobic, transphobic, misogynist, and so on. Some of these comments may say things like, "Don't you understand that if you were there, Hamas would behead you?" And so we know that there is a link, a very clear indication of the kind of way that homophobia, transphobia, misogyny play a role in settler colonialism, that they are part of it, they are grounded in it, they are the way that it works and it manifests. And so the link there that I also wanted to make is just thinking through, I'm also a professor at San Diego State in women's gender and sexuality studies, so I was just going to say a word or two about repression on university campuses and what the context is there as well. So also thinking about Alejandro's comments and as an educator and how that all goes down. So we see, probably many of you have heard, but there's a huge amount of violence in the silence and fear and repression on college campuses. And it's all very, it's indirect in terms of the violent silence that we're seeing from administration and administrators, but also in the very clear repression of free speech and academic freedom. And one of the main avenues for this is with the conflation of anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism. A major player in this propagating this narrative is the ADL. And I name and I cite this, the ADL specifically. There's many things we could say, and I don't think there's time, so I won't go down that road, but happy to talk more after. But one thing I just want to name is, for instance, as like by way of example, that the ADL and the Brandeis Center had issued an open letter and sent it to university administrators across the nation to charge them with investigating Students for Justice in Palestine on their campuses with material support for terrorism. That specific clause, material support for terrorism, is born in the 1994 crime bill, which inaugurated mass incarceration, which targeted Black and Brown communities. Just a nod to the links that other folks who have been up here tonight have been making as well. But also just the danger of that, of charging university administrators with going after student organizations who are leading protests, vigils, and education campaigns on their university campuses to just spread awareness about genocide and the way that it is happening. So this is a little bit, I wanted to name for folks who are interested in resources, that if you just go to Palestinian Feminist Collective Instagram page, or there's also Facebook, there's a website, but most of the resources are on Instagram and Facebook, and they're linked there in the link tree. You can find a whole host of things, but among them are, because we've been also involved in direct action, but in teach-ins and creating pedagogy kinds of things. So just wanted to let you know that, for instance, there's an All Out for Palestine toolkit, and it has a huge amount of resources and links out to a lot of things. It will give you ways of talking to folks in different settings. It will give you just a huge variety of things. And there are also links, for instance, to like sticker templates to print out stickers. So I wanted to let you know about that resource. And if I may, I noticed that some folks who have come up, I was not asked to do this. So I'm sorry. I hope you will allow me to take a little bit of time to read one short poem. It is because I've noticed that folks are reading others' poems. So just thinking through, one of the things also that is part of PFC praxis is to make connections and build coalitions across movements and struggles for liberation. And one amazing poet, June Jordan, had long done that and built solidarity with Palestine. So I wanted to end by reading her Intifada Incantation, poem number 8 for BBL by June Jordan. I said I loved you and I wanted genocide to stop. I said I loved you and I wanted affirmative action and reaction. I said I loved you and I wanted music out the windows. I said I loved you and I wanted nobody thirst and nobody cold. I said I loved you and I wanted justice under my nose. I said I loved you and I wanted boundaries to disappear. I wanted nobody roll back the trees. I wanted nobody take away daybreak. I wanted nobody freeze all the people on their knees. I wanted you. I wanted your kiss on the skin of my soul. And now you say you love me and I stand, despite the trillion treacheries of sand. You say you love me and I hold the longing of the winter in my hand. You say you love me and I commit to friction and the undertaking of the pearl. You say you love me. You say you love me. And I have begun. I begin to believe maybe you do. I am tasting myself in the mouth of the sun. Free Palestine.
Thank you so much, Amira. Before our last poet, I just want to give space to Charles Frederick of West Side Justice for Palestine, who also very generously brought this banner, has been organizing with them. So he's just sharing a poem with us, and we have one more. Please welcome Charles.
So, Justice for Palestine. We have this banner, and two others. We drop them over the interstate. We poster at Santa Monica Promenade and the pier. And we've been trying to track down Ted Lieu. He was supposed to show up at Santa Monica College, but he heard that we were coming and he disappeared. And we also went to his, around the corner from his office on Santa Monica Boulevard, and we had a great time there for about 2 hours with all the traffic going down Santa Monica Boulevard postering. So, I wrote this after, in 2009, just after Cast Lead, which, if you recall, was like the biggest orgy of blood and violence up until this one, where 1,100, 1,200 Palestinians were killed. And I just couldn't understand what was happening. So this is my effort to deal with it. Oh, Israel. Wounded Knee, Guernica, Warsaw, Fallujah, Gaza. Oh, Israel, why should you be the one to forget that never again meant never again to anyone? Bodies survive, poisoned by the memory of 6 million dead, fast acting, long lasting, limiting the vision, hardening the heart, till the victim becomes the abuser. As before, the designate ones are shuttered into slums, and you bomb the rubble in the hope of removing all hope. But you should know, truth cannot be bombed away, and what you'd erase with bombs digs deeper, awaiting a new spring to rise. If terror taught submission, you would not be. So why do you presume to teach this lesson? O Israel, born in sins that might be forgiven were their contrition, instead of endless denial, what the pain of your suffering costs others. Murder must cease. Theft of lives and land till no one can stand untouched on the land of their fathers. Where is the honor in this? Muslim, Christian, Jew, when they say to you, stop, enough is enough, the answer is the same, bulldozers and bombs. When they plead, please, you pretend not to hear, convinced in your lies that your safety lies when others die. So the lies continue, and you become the lie. The floggings will continue until morale improves. A joke, is it not? A sad one. Though you laugh, The joke is on you.
As poet, Brother Arthur Kazakian, bring us home.
Hey everybody. According to official records, before Hitler invaded Poland, he wrote a letter to his generals in a war speech, and he said, "After all, who remembers the annihilation of the Armenians?" And this poem that I'm going to start with is by Palestinian poet Najwan Darwish from his book, Exhausted on the Cross, Who Remembers the Armenians? I remember them, and I ride the nightmare bus with them each night. And my coffee this morning, I'm drinking it with them. You, murderer, who remembers you? I was born in Iran in 1977 on a war-torn block. And in 1979, when the Ayatollah invaded Iran, we had 1 year to get out. My family fled in 1980 due to the Ayatollah invasion, and that was a chaotic year. This poem that I wrote is called Translation because it's a translation of that chaos. Translation. As in the night that wrecked my hands, a city of crows dragged through the sky. As in a skull of complex nightmares, the black owl of my mouth, a box of dreams for strangling, as in hope, as in my mother's voice, as in we avoided the mouth of a door forced open, as in the quiet voice of God crashing through the lifeless, a separation of animal to spirit, as in salt turns an ocean nocturnal with its smallness. The night between us has a restless gap. As in birds flutter, as in cage, as in a wild hive of prayers under my breath, as in we live just one more breath with segments of light, as in we live in a city dragged to the sea by the hands of its night, as in the sugar of a dying language, the scent of ash and a bashed-in door, as in smoke rings blown from the glorified mouth of a general, as in river, then a slice of jail, of wine stain, the torture of praying, as in history, as in we wait with white men for metal doors to slide open. Instead of anger, we have flower petal weight on our shoulders, as in psychedelic. It's okay, we smile. It's not okay, we know. As in more red than music, more curfews dropped on our homes than nightfall, as in memory, as in the threaded rasp of my mother's voice cloaks the siren. She walks closer to me, ever slowly dropping parts of her dark sky. Instead of radio, a ghost picks up a stream, a frequency foreign to the ear, as in we are foreign stones who have turned to wishes without promise. As in we flee, we dance, moonwalk in our shadows, as in we fall, as in we fall, as in we fall through our mother's lies for safety, as in we live beneath the yellow death of sun, our mother's lies for safety, as in we live beneath the yellow death of sun, our mother's lies for safety, as in we live beneath the yellow death of sun, our language a summer bomb mixed with extinction, as in I was delivered from war when my mother fired up the lie barricaded in her breast to save me. As in bandana, as in these days I feel ill-gotten, which is to say I'm rugged, as in I stare hard at your paintings before I take them with me. As in my friends call me the Armenian Persianist, as in an immigrant with a junkyard smile. As in my friends dressed like wolves, as in joy has been swept to an aftermath of bodies mangled, as in ill, as in cough from the small of my delicate son, as in touch, as in we lock lips under the flicker of lights in a dim-walled hallway, as in my crime is not so much in denying my hunger, but the great extent I went to hide my ability for loss. As in ship, as in disembark, as in the English language, as in technology wheeling its way into my mouth until my broken native tongue spits out words in boats of abandon, as in the war, as in on us, as in the night a city howls in honor of its body count, as in the cemetery has grown jealous of its city, and the evening tucked in its blade so the sunset could live. Free Palestine.
Round of applause for all our poets, organizers, you, thank you. Huge shout out to the staff, Eric, Quentin, Jimmy, Genesis, Nick. Thank you all for making tonight possible. We've raised over $600 for the Palestine Children's Relief Fund, probably more. So thank you all. Free Palestine, and just to please stick around for a little bit, check out our bookstore, have some conversations with the poets, organizers, the person next to you, and while we do that, Disco Stand will be providing a soundtrack for us, so please, we have a few more minutes, so thank you all. And una foto, yeah, let's do a group photo with all the poets. Thank you all. Thank you. I loved yours. That was beautiful. It was my favorite. Really? I mean, it took me a long time to write. It was work. You put work into it.
من عيني هواد وانا على قرآ باكر دامع من عيني هواد وانا على قرآ باكر وانا على قرآ لبكي بين الناس مع الضحكي وانا على قرآ لبكي وبين الناس مع الضحكي حرمت لعب الذكر سابقت ثيابي وحديت وسابقت ثيابي مني عغزال الراح جبي وانسب من فرع الطاويل دورت مثله مليل